Pilot boys in the building. Let's go.
Pilot boys, we get on up. We gon' fly, boys, we getting up.
You're listening to the Pilot Boys podcast. We're here with a very special guest, former NBA professional basketball player, but also a current philanthropist, venture capitalist, and entrepreneur, Josh Childress. Josh, thanks for joining us. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
No problem,
Thanks
man.
for coming on.
Yeah, your story is amazing, man, from beginning to now, and obviously still being written. We wanted to obviously shed some light on it because I think there are a lot of different important aspects of it, not to mention a lot of insight that I think that you can give kind of us about what's happening now and overall in the climate, and then specifically in kind of the sports world. But before we get to some of that stuff, I just kind of want to talk a little bit about how you grew up. Obviously, you grew up in California. I kind of wanted to get your perspective on kind of California, how it was growing up in California, and then also playing basketball in California, and when you kind of realized that, like, wow, I might actually be something. I might actually be a star at this game of basketball.
Yeah, man, Cali, obviously, you know, it's home, right? It's just where I was born and raised, and you know, I'm loyal to that. I think that you know, the basketball scene here is really unlike anywhere else in the world. You know, there's just a deep pool of talent every single year. Now, granted, we're one of the larger states in the country, but I think that there's just a great landscape for youth sports and the development of kids, and there's just a great talent pool to choose from. So, like, you know, we came out and it was just, I mean, it was year after year after year where, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5 draft picks, you know, and so that obviously is pretty powerful. And like growing up here, you know, I wouldn't trade it for the world, man. I learned a lot. I've made some great relationships, and you know, I'm still living in Southern California. So to that point, like I've been able to play all over the world, but you know, this is always going to be home.
Who are some of the toughest guys that you played against in high school?
In high school, well, we were teammates with a lot of guys, but like playing against Dominguez was always tough. So you know, Tyson Chandler and Bobby Jones and Steve Moore and Darius Sanders and that crew was tough. Dejon Thompson over in Redondo Union was tough. Modern day guys with Cedric Bozeman and Jamal Sampson and Mikey Strawberry and that crew was tough. I mean, you just kind of go around Southern California.
Right.
Like,
every school is loaded.
Right, and then to think that a lot of those guys that I just named were on my AAU team, right? So like we match up against each other, you know, during the year, and then you know in the summers we get together and hoop together. So you know, it was obviously quality.
And when did you know? Like, how old were you around when you started to realize, like, wow, this could actually be something that I maybe do professionally?
Man, I didn't realize that until I was a junior in college.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. So,
yeah.
So let's talk about college. Obviously, you know, you went to Stanford, and, you know, that's I would say one of the top 3, maybe even top 1 schools when you're talking about kind of the unique combination of great academics and great athletics, and a kind of a trailblazer in that regard. What was it that made you decide to choose Stanford to go to college?
Yeah, I mean, at the time, I don't know if you guys really remember back then, Stanford was, you know, pretty much a top 10 team in the country, you know, every year, right? Yeah. And so the basketball side of it was, you know, kind of a no-brainer because I went into a program where I felt like I fit in, you know, and I fit into the system and I was able to grow as a person and as a player. On the academic side, I mean, as a 17, 18-year-old kid, I didn't really understand that. I mean, you think you do, but you don't really until, you know, well after the fact, and you know, having conversations and, you know, trying to tap into the network and, you know, the network welcomes you with open arms. Yeah. And that's when you realize, all right, you know, that's when I made the right decision, you know, having conversations with, you know, very, very successful individuals now, you know, as I venture into the business space, you know, it's paid dividends for me significantly. So very happy with that decision. Yeah. But at the time, it was really a basketball decision for me.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit about, I always say basketball is the most difficult sport to make it to professionally, right, to the NBA level. Can you tell us a little bit about how the competition changed from, say, high school then to Stanford, then to the NBA, and the differences you noticed in the skill level and what really stood out once you got to the college level and NBA level in terms of the differences.
Yeah. I mean, you just think about it from a high school perspective. You may have, one or two guys on the team that can dominate, and propel their team to a CIF title or a state title or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
College can be similar, but you still need a little bit more, more talent behind you. Need a better supporting system. But you figure you go from high school to college, the speed of the game is a lot faster. Guys are playing a lot harder. That's your first kind of introduction to travel, scouting reports, things of that sort. But then you take that to the league, and everybody in the league was the man or close to being the man on their college team, right? And so you go from, solid guys to then everybody can play and everybody can, put 20 on your head any given night.
Yeah.
And so it's just a big jump in talent level, big jump in speed of the game, athleticism, all that stuff. So, it's tough, man. I was reading something, I can't remember when, but said that there's been like 5,000 NBA players in the history of the game.
Wow.
Or the history of the league. Right. And so when you think about the millions and millions of kids that play sports every year, basketball every year, to have only had 5,000, in the history of the league, I think the league is 60 or 70 years old.
Right.
That's
significant. That is significant.
That's significant.
If you didn't go to Stanford, where would you have gone? Who else was in the runnings?
Yeah, man. So my number 2 choice at that time was Kansas.
Okay.
Coach Roy Williams was
he was on
very convincing and getting me there. I just couldn't get past moving to Kansas, right? And like being that far away from my family. But outside of that, it was Arizona and Carolina. Carolina ended up signing another small forward before I had a chance to really kind of dive into looking at them, I guess on a more serious note.
Right.
I mean, those were the kind of the top schools.
I want to ask you one more question before we get into some more college questions. I want to talk about AAU for a second and just your perspective on it, because back then, AAU was different. It seemed different back then. It seemed like more of a privilege to kind of be able to play in AAU, and the competition was different. Now it seems like everybody plays AAU, like regardless of skill set. And then also it seems like there's a, influx of kind of bad actors, so to say, and agents and money and Adidas and there's like just a total difference. Talk a little bit about that. What was the difference in your perspective from what it was like back then versus what it is now? Yeah,
I mean, AAU in that regard was the same back then. You just didn't have the cameras around to capture it, but it was, everybody played it. The one thing I would say is once you got to high school, there was one team. There was no 15 and under, 16 and under, 17 and under.
Right.
Either you were good enough to play 17 and under or you weren't. Right. So for us, once we got out of 8th grade and got into high school, you either had to be good enough for the A squad or not. And, that's when, we went out and played I was on a Nike team. So we played in the Nike circuit, the Peach Jam and Boo Williams and all those tournaments. But, I think that, having these kind of age divisions has watered it down a bit.
Yeah.
I can't speak. Yeah, it is what it is, right? It's just the nature of the beast right now. You had your NJB and like all those other leagues and AAU stuff that was around, and it's just there was nobody really capturing that footage, so it just wasn't in your face as much.
Right.
And let me I forgot to mention the other stuff.
Sure.
That other kind of seedy underbelly was there too. Like,
always been there.
The agents and runners and, the shoe companies and all that stuff. So I don't think that'll ever go anywhere.
Right.
But like I said, it's just documented now, which is
everywhere. Yeah. That's actually a perfect segue to kind of my next question, which is about kind of the Pac-12. Well, it's probably Pac-10 when you were playing, right? But now it's the Pac-12.
Yeah.
And recently, a bunch of players kind of united to present essentially a list of demands that they feel like they need to be met before they decide they want to continue to play. And this is something that V and I have always talked about kind of on this show is as what's kind of needed to happen is that the players are going to have to, be the ones that kind of be the voice of this for there to be significant change. And interestingly enough, kind of Bomani Jones kind of put it in a grand perspective of kind of how this is. It's basically they're looking at everything from under the same lens, essentially under the same lens of kind of white supremacy, right? You're talking about the Black Lives Matter movement obviously being one, COVID and how that's affected communities of color disproportionately. And then also just kind of college sports and particularly the big revenue sports where, a lot of Black bodies are the ones that are responsible for generating this revenue, but not the ones that are necessarily benefiting financially and being able to change their lives generationally. And I think all of these things are kind of hitting the fan at the same time. And these players kind of stepped forward and said, listen, we're not doing this anymore. And I guess it seems like something that you would have been a part of, number one. And number two, I guess, is talk to us a little bit about what you think about kind of the demands themselves specifically, if you've gotten a chance to see them. And then secondly, what you think about kind of college athlete activism.
Mm-hmm. I actually, unfortunately, haven't had a chance to see the list of demands.
Okay.
But I'm sure that they're valid, and
they're
guys
asking for COVID protections. They're asking for increased medical
6 years,
insurance.
6 years after their career's over of medical coverage.
They want a revenue share. They want they talked about endowments, basically like why do you have an endowment for $27 billion and yet you want to cut all these sports and saying there's not enough money to go around. So obviously I know you would want to get more familiar probably before you comment more specifically, but that's kind of the basis of what they're coming at.
Yeah, I think obviously is very makes perfect sense to ask for COVID protection and ask for medical support, especially because a lot of times, and this is what maybe some of the public doesn't know, you get pressed to play. If you're injured, if you have things going on. I know a bunch of guys who had potential career-ending injuries who, had to suck it up and play or, were pressured to play, across the country. Right. And you're getting shots here and you're getting this and you're cortisone and all that stuff. And so 100%, they should have, the ability to get medical coverage, outside of, after they graduate or after they leave the school, especially football guys, with the amount of wear and tear that goes on their bodies. In terms of revenue share, I think that's going to be a difficult play, just because, the NCAA has, done an incredible job of, really marketing themselves as this amateur league or amateur organization.
Right.
And, and the public at large doesn't see past that, and so, I'm not a fan of what they've done, but you got to respect the fact that they've marketed themselves as that for so long, while the CEO makes a couple $1 million a year and, they have these $1 billion, TV contracts. So if it were me, I would say, finding a way to give the guys some sort of kind of package, either on a per year basis or after they graduate, they get, a chunk of change as kind of like a payment thing. The one thing that's challenging this whole thing right now is the G League, especially in basketball, as the G League has come out, these $500,000 contracts, you're taking some of the top talent. But yeah, if you can get guys, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years in, they get, have this money deposit into an escrow account that they then get to have after they finish or after they graduate. I think that would be something that could be very helpful, and also increasing the stipend based on where you live, or based on where your school is. One of the things that I struggle with always was Palo Alto is expensive, right? And I'm getting the same stipend check that the guy in Huntsville, Alabama is getting. Right. It just doesn't make sense. Right. Yeah. So, the cost of living is significantly higher. I couldn't go out and rent an apartment. I had to stay on campus all 3 years. Right. So finding other ways to kind of get the guys paid, in addition to obviously the likeness, getting paid for your likeness and actually getting paid, being able to get paid for, who you are as an individual is something that is a given on my end.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to circle back to something you mentioned about the G League starting to offer contracts, and now guys starting to, we've seen the progress of this cycle for a while, right? From straight out of high school to having to be 1 year removed, and you saw the one and done phase. Now you have the G League kind of coming in and essentially competing almost by offering these contracts. I just want to see, as with your experience as a player, what you thought about that in terms of the advantages to, say, going to college for a year or two versus saying, hey, I want to go to the G League. Obviously, it's all dependent on a person's individual circumstances. But what your thoughts were about kind of the shift that we're seeing?
I mean, I think the biggest positive for me with college was just it was fun. I built lifelong relationships there. I now have a network that I can tap into, post career, and that's the biggest positive. But for an individual who, is a one and done type kid, or is whose family is in a situation where they really need, some assistance, that G League option is very viable. And I mean, the G League, I spent after a season in Australia, I came and spent like a month in the G League trying to get a call up, and it's a different kind of grind, man. And the trips are not league
it's like
trips.
Minor league, it's like minor league baseball.
It's like minor league baseball, right? Having to go through that is, it's a mental and physical grind that I think is a sharp contrast to probably what a lot of these universities, have in terms of travel and where you're going. But I mean, I think it's a great option for certain kids. You know, some not. I think some kids need, to give themselves a couple years to get ready to go to the league. But for a kid that's a surefire one and done kind of kid, I'm all for it.
That's the argument that, some people who are in favor of the NCAA kind of try to push forward is like, well, what about the value? Forget about just money. What about the value of the network? What about the value of, the education, all the type of stuff that you can get in the NCAA, which I think have some merit, right? There's some value there. I don't think it's enough to justify, what I consider the financial oppression, but it does have value. But I think the better thing is that's happening now is that there are options. And what's interesting about the NBA doing that was it seemed as though the NBA and the NCAA were kind of in cahoots, right? Of kind of like, okay, this is great. The NCAA is like a free, like minor league that's breeding this talent for us. But now that they did that to compete. That kind of shocked me that they did that. Was that shocking to you when you saw that?
The other thing with it, well, let me touch on your first comment.
Okay.
It does not outweigh, unless you're just, gung ho about being in business afterwards.
Right.
I don't think it outweighs it. I mean, if you pay me $500,000 my first year out, I can set, a portion of that aside and go back to school when I want to.
Right.
But you go to school to get a good job.
Right.
And, people harp on the education component, which I understand, but, you spend 4 years there to come out ready to get a good job. And so if you can get a good job at 18, why not? Right.
Exactly.
So that's that. I would also speak to the NBA kind of coming in and doing this, probably as a response to a league that I'm a part of. This is the NBL over in Australia. And, we've now had, I think, 4 or 5 kids come over there, as that in that gap year and then come back. And so, you lose a kid like, LaMelo Ball, who is, a very popular kid, a couple million followers, and it's kind of one of those types of kids.
And has your frame.
I
said he kind of has your frame.
He does. He's going to be a good player. But he went over to the NBL, and that league, the arenas were selling out every night, 15,000, 16,000, and the NBA would love to have that here, right? So I
So you
think
think it was more of a response to that than it was to just
I think combination, right?
Okay.
Combination of all. I mean, you were going to start seeing more of these kids either go to China or Australia. Probably Australia more than China, just because of the language barrier and just the ease of transition into living there.
Right.
So the league, has the platform ready. It's just a matter of kind of getting, a team and a coach in place to allow those players to develop, outside of, the specific G League teams that are directly connected to the NBA teams.
Right.
One other question that I had about this is we're also seeing a trend with McCormaker and Mikey Williams talking about going to HBCUs versus going to these larger institutions. Wanted to get your thoughts on that in terms of how it could potentially impact their game, right? Their development of their game and resources. And if you think it's a viable option and a smart option for these kids to take.
I love it. And I think it's a viable option, because it shakes the system up a bit. Right. And, it's always kind of a foregone conclusion that, of the 24 Mickey D's All-Americans, you're probably going to have, most of them at, your blue blood college programs or your larger college programs. And so, changing that narrative, getting some of these kids to HBCUs and or smaller programs, it obviously boosts that platform a bit. But I think that it makes them the trendsetter.
Yeah.
Right. So you're not one of many, you are the one, and so I really like that. And I think, these kids doing that is smart. I mean, you step outside of the norm, you get some of these other programs to take notice. Now you got, probably Howard and Morehouse and some of the other schools that are going to be on the schedules of your Carolinas and Dukes and things of that sort, and not just as a fill-in game, as a the premier game. So it's pretty cool.
The other thing I like about it too is that I think there's an assumption that the only good coaches are the coaches that are at Duke and North Carolina. But a lot of these schools have great coaches. They just never necessarily have the talent. So I think it's also great for them, the opportunity to showcase some of that as well.
Yeah. And my hope is that then brings more sponsorship dollars to these programs. It also allows them to upgrade their facilities.
Yes.
Just brings a level of awareness to the fact that these are, very strong, viable universities that, just don't have the resources and the support to be on the grander stage, but, are still great places to go to school.
Speaking of trend setting, right? This is a subject that I wanted to touch on since we're here is your actual career arc, right? You were the number 6 overall pick in the NBA, which is saying you're one of the top 10 players in the country, and a draft lottery pick. So you're a very viable NBA player, and you go to Atlanta, you play for a few years, and then you make a very, very, at the time, eyebrow-raising decision, right? You could get a viable contract in the NBA to go over to Greece. Can you take us into that decision and what prompted you to kind of leave the NBA dream that everyone says that you have to be a part of to make a better decision for yourself individually over in Greece?
Yeah. So that decision was really rooted in, the restricted free agent process and, having a GM that I had no relationship with coming to the team and basically forced me to go out and, and get other offers. Right. So my agents were working diligently, trying to get other offers. We had 2 that were signing trade deals, and the GM at the time didn't want to explore those. Right. And so here I am. I've played 4 years. The Hawks have made it to the playoffs for the first time in, 20 plus years. There was a buzz in the city. There was an excitement, all that stuff. I was a part of that core group, that had, kind of created this turnaround. And then, this guy comes in and acts like I'm nothing. Right. So to that point, I then said, all right, well, I am going to go out and explore offers. And we did that. And, this offer in Greece comes up. And so the financial component of it, really set me up where I had the same earnings potential in 3 years that I would have in 5 years, based on kind of what my market value was in the league at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking, it doesn't really take a rocket scientist to figure that out.
Right.
I can make in 3 years what I probably will make in 5 years, and I don't have the tax implications. And so I then explored it a little bit further. They flew me over there, got, to see what the country was like in the summer, which is when it's at its best.
Yeah.
And and so I went back to the team and said, hey, this is what I'm looking to do. There was a little bit of pushback. I don't think that they expected me to do it.
Yeah.
And I signed the deal and, made that decision. And then ironically, I came back after 2 years and signed the same deal that I would have signed, that first, after my fourth year in Atlanta. So I got 2 years of extra earnings there, at a higher clip than I probably would have, staying in Atlanta.
And how do you think that experience kind of helped you, not just as a player, as a person, kind of seeing how the rest of the world operates?
It helped me more as a person than as a player, I would say. I got exposed to, a wide range of cultures. My teammates were Greek and Serbian and Croatian and, from all over the world. And so I just got exposed to things that I didn't necessarily get exposed to in the league, and then I was on my own, for 2 years in a foreign country. Right. And so there's a level of personal growth that kind of comes in with that. So it was definitely a good experience, and I wouldn't change it. I think that, I grew as a man, and, I'm happy that I did it.
And you said you wouldn't change it. So if you were to be faced with that same situation again, knowing everything that you know now, at the same time, you think you would have made the same decision?
Yeah. Now, if we're talking now, these contracts are much more crazy now than they were back in like 2008. But
yeah. That's interesting.
But yeah, I would do the same thing.
One more question on NBA. First of all, I want to know just kind of generally your experience with the NBA and your feeling just kind of about the league in general, as a player, but also kind of what you're seeing now with Adam Silver and some of the movements and the Black Lives Matter movement and, the anthem talk and stuff like that. And then also the bubble. Like when you look at the NBA now, first of all, do you look at it as like the same league? Do you recognize this league, or does it look different to you? And then also, what do you think about some of the stuff that you're seeing happen now?
Yeah, the league has grown and it's progressed. I think, Adam Silver came in and came in with some fresh new ideas. He put the power into the players' hands a little bit more than David Stern did, and really tried to, I think, make the league more so about the players. So I am appreciative of that. And obviously, like I mentioned a little bit ago, the contracts have gotten a lot better for guys.
Right.
And so I always love to see guys, able to have life-changing situations where they can provide for themselves and their family, on a larger scale. So like that's powerful to me, and I'm really appreciative of that being, what the NBA is about right now. The bubble is, it's just a victim of. When I say a victim, it's it's circumstantial, right? It's a byproduct of the circumstances, and I think that the league at large is too large to cancel the season, and there's too much of a financial component at stake to do so, not only for the players but for the teams and the owners, and so I'm happy that they were able to find an option. I think that, either Orlando or I don't know if like Vegas will be the next option based on the infrastructure that's in place. I think that the league has a chance to really like set itself apart from the other leagues. Yeah. You see MLB is struggling right now, with a lot of the guys kind of testing positive for the Marlins. Yeah. NFL, I don't know how they're going to.
They're opting out. Players are opting out left and right. Too.
Yep. And so,
the bubble seems to be the only way to really do this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But how do you do a bubble with,
the NFL? It's almost
NFL, with, 90 guys on a team or whatever that number is. So, this is a great opportunity for the NBA to kind of be a trendsetter / guinea pig, if you will.
Right.
The only show in town, right?
Right. So, so I'm happy with that. And obviously on the activism front, as I mentioned, Silver has allowed the guys to kind of be, a bit more out in the open with their voices and let their voices be heard. I think that, allowing them to kind of have whatever personal message they want on the back of their uniform is pretty cool. I would challenge the league to also, step in and support some of these other organizations and or Black businesses, that, maybe, we're relying on the league, being in those local markets,
right?
All the businesses in downtown Atlanta, all those businesses in, downtown, I don't know, Milwaukee or wherever Indianapolis and some of these, Cleveland, some of these smaller markets that, we're really reliant on arena foot traffic. So either the league or, finding ways to kind of come in and help support some of those local businesses would be something I would love to see.
I think that offers a great transition point. I'm going to start with this and we'll get into the business part of it. But kind of to bridge your career from the NBA to the business world, right? I wanted to ask you about the value of being an NBA player beyond being an NBA player, right? You mentioned with Stanford, your network. Like when you first started to realize the opportunity, Mecca and I talked to a lot of younger athletes, and we always talk about taking advantage of the rooms that you're able to get into. It seems like that was kind of your first step. Like you kind of had an idea of what you wanted to do, but you started building your network. Can you take us into kind of the value of being an NBA player and helping you get to whatever other goals you have? Because your careers often end very early, and you have your whole life to live. And that seems to be a challenging thing for a lot of players, and one that hasn't seemed as challenging for you.
Yeah, I think that's rooted in how you identify yourself. If you only identify yourself as an NBA player and that's kind of what you lead with, you're in for a rude awakening.
Yeah.
That only lasts for so long. And I think that will open doors for you. But if there's no substance to underpin that, then you're in for a rude awakening again. So, to that point, I've had a great success in getting introductions, getting, tied and tapped into different networks based on my NBA history. But then I have to have something to back it up. And so that's that next step where maybe some guys don't have that to kind of hold on to, and they then find themselves trying to struggle with, what is my identity? This is all I've ever done. This is all I've ever known. And that's tough. I mean, it's a tough gig because, it's a business where you have to be 100% locked in on your craft, for so long.
Yes.
And if you aren't, then, GMs and coaches and people, essentially kind of position you as not locked in, and not focused on, on a task at hand. So you have to be locked into that. I guess find a way. LeBron has done it great. There's a couple other guys that have done it great. Now LeBron is a different kind of beast, but to create a platform on the side of his playing stuff that he could then really kind of seamlessly transition into once he's done playing.
And that brings me to another question too. Before we get to the specifics of what you're doing now business wise, which is very interesting too, I also want to talk kind of just about that transition out from a mental perspective, because a lot of our friends. Most of our friends are NFL guys or former NFL guys. And, we've seen just the things that they've gone through after retiring, right? The depression, trying to figure out identity crises, mismanagement of money, like a lot of those different things. First of all, I guess kind of what is your perspective on that? And how were you able to, manage some of those issues, number one? And then number two, what if anything, could the leagues or the leagues or colleges be doing better to kind of prepare these guys for that moment? Because it's going to come, even if you play 20 years, it's still going to come.
Yeah. So colleges really don't do much to help prepare, and as I mentioned before, I mean, you're there as an athlete student, they say student athlete, but
right.
You are 100% athlete student, athlete first.
Yeah.
And a lot of times with that, they push you into majors that don't really translate into real world application. So for myself, like I could only handle being a sociology major based on like the course load, I'm not like downplaying sociology or sociology majors, but like, where's the life application afterwards? Right. So that's a norm for a lot of basketball or a lot of college athletes. You have your exceptions. I had a couple of teammates that could, that were econ majors or pre-med or whatever, but that was like maybe 2 out of the 15, so
the demands are different, like even scheduling labs and stuff like that. Like, it's crazy. I remember.
Crazy. So, colleges don't really do much for you in that regard. I think the league, I can speak for the NBA, they've put support systems in place to put a pool of funds together to allow you to go back to school, which I'm taking advantage of now as well. So I'm getting my master's in real estate through a league program.
Awesome.
So that's really supportive and helpful. But by and large, I mean, it kind of comes down to who you surround yourself with, who your mentors are. I grew up I came out in an era where everything was about the flash and the bling and the chains and the this and that and all that stuff. And now there's been a shift where guys are talking more about investing, talking more about tech deals and real estate and all these other things. So I think that the league by and large has become more sophisticated in that regard. But it's tough. I mean, as an employer, how do you then say, hey, you need to do X, Y, Z because, we need to make sure that you're set up for success afterwards. When, the NBA is focused on, trying to grow the business and their bottom line. Right. And so it's difficult. And there needs to be a layer of separation there. So, I saw that like Jermaine O'Neal and Tracy McGrady, they started a sports agency.
Right.
So that's a wealth of knowledge for young guys that's coming out, that they can get. And I think that's what it's going to take. It's going to take more former athletes, stepping up and helping the younger guys, through, their growing pains of, first getting into the league and all that stuff. And, just a concerted effort from players in general to be a lot smarter about who they surround themselves with, which financial advisors they're choosing, and, the notion that this is going to last forever, which obviously it never does.
Right. And you've also become very successful in business. And I want to obviously highlight that. One of the reasons why we wanted to have you on this show is what you're doing in business. I mean, since you've left the NBA and left basketball, you've become an entrepreneur, venture capitalist, philanthropist, community leader with big visions and actually big execution, and now the CEO of Landspire Group. I wanted to give you a chance to kind of talk about some of the initiatives that you're doing, just in terms of what the actual things that you're doing, but then also what inspires you to kind of go that route as well.
Yeah, thanks for that. So over my career, I mean, I've always been involved and intrigued by business, right? And that started from my Stanford days and like all the millionaires and billionaires that I met, on campus, right? And like, what do you do? And how are you able to afford that house? And, and all that stuff, right? So that was always intriguing to me. Being exposed to that in the earlier age was great, for me now. But, my focus right now is on the real estate side. I think that, while tech is tech and it's incredibly transformative and disruptive, real estate by and large is where I feel like most of the individuals always kind of come back to. You have your, you look at a case study like, I don't know, Bezos, right? He's created the world's largest online platform. And now they're underpinning that by going and buying Whole Foods that has brick and mortar retail. And they're going to start rolling out probably some more, Amazon grocery stores and this and that. And, the warehouse space that they need for their distribution centers. Like, it all comes back to real estate. Mm-hmm. So for me, that was the driver in trying to, make this, my next phase was, just the impact that it has on, everyone, right? Everybody needs a place to live. Businesses need a place to operate. E-commerce and marketplaces need, physical space to house their goods. So, Landspire Group, we're focused on under-resourced communities. We have a couple projects we're working on now. One that we just got approval for in the city of Compton, which is where I'm from. Nice. We have another project right outside of Las Vegas, the Las Vegas Strip, so the high growth area where you're now seeing probably from this COVID situation, there's this millennial flight that's happening where people are moving outside of LA and the Bay Area and, some of these other areas into more affordable places. Right. So, you're starting to see an uptick in Nevada, in Arizona, in Texas, in Utah, to more suburban and or affordable places. So, that's been my focus for the last year and change, is building this company. I did it with my former college teammate and roommate at Stanford. So it's been a great journey for us trying to navigate a whole new space, as businessmen.
And what challenges has that provided in terms of, from just the financial standpoint? Because I know one issue that a lot of people have generally, but then also even more particularly minorities have is raising money, right? Or getting access to money or finding the money. How have you navigated that, and what challenges have come along with that?
Man, it's been a challenge. I tell you what, we bootstrapped some of it ourselves, and so I'm thankful that, I was able to invest in myself by saving, prior to this. Yeah. Then we just started reaching out to the personal networks, and, that Stanford network definitely helped. And then I'm based in Orange County now, and, I reached out to my Orange County network and, have gotten a fair amount of kind of friends and family on board, and individuals who are successful, who understand the real estate space. But it is a challenge, and raising a fund for a project, your first project in the middle of, a pandemic has been unlike anything that I think anybody has experienced. But to that point, we've been really resilient. And, one of the things that I admire, having gone through as an athlete was, adversity, right? You deal with that, you deal with injuries, you deal with getting cut, you deal with losing games, you deal with all that stuff. It's like, all right, I got to bounce back. And that's what we've been able to do time and time again. So, we're excited about these opportunities, but, raising money is not easy at all.
I actually had a specific question in reading about your company and specifically where you invest in, right? Which are some more challenging communities that traditional investments haven't taken to, and some of them seem to be opportunities on projects as well. And one of the things, I study real estate quite a bit. One of the things that I'm concerned about with this space is that what you see an investment, it's like the sharks come out, right? They go to a community, they build it up, nice, shiny, and nice. But then the people who've lived in those communities for generations are pushed out. It's no longer affordable for them, or the community isn't the same. In being in this space, how do you kind of address those challenges, right? To make sure that in the interest of development, we're not losing track of the people that have relied on this community for years and years and years.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great question. And I think the one thing that we come into these areas with is a good understanding of the area and of the people that live there, having been from there. So to speak about Compton specifically, I understand that, the people that are living there have, either been dealt a bad hand, have had some generational or some family issues. Maybe there's a lack of education from some of the family members. And so for us, it's about how can we come in here, develop a property that the people and the city can be proud of, that is underpinned by programming to help the younger generation and the adults, with some upper mobility. So whether that's job training, tutoring, we're looking at creating something else. And I don't know if can roll out the strategy, if you will, but there's a large, gap, black white wealth gap in this country that's rooted in systemic racism over the last 150, 200 years. And so how can we create projects where we essentially allow the community at large to be equity holders in the deal, right? So they go along for the ride with us, where then when we sell, they then see a chunk of change that can roll over into home ownership, which then allows them to start creating some wealth for themselves and their family. So we go into these things with all that in mind. And I think on the flip side of that, there needs to be an educational component of people in these communities around, not selling grandma's house, when somebody comes in, and not allowing somebody to just kind of offer up what you think is a large chunk of change without doing your research and understanding that, this home in Inglewood is much more valuable than you imagine. And, the guys that are going to build the Forum, or Steve Ballmer, when he builds this new Clippers, mega stadium, needs this area. And so I shouldn't sell this. And so there needs to be an educational component there as well, to help those people understand that, they need to either hold on or understand what the real value is and actually get that value versus allowing somebody to just kind of come in and take over.
That's a great point.
That's a fantastic point. And I appreciate that, because, V's been in real estate, and it's something that I'm trying to learn about. And that is an issue that I think we have to deal with as we get in that. And so being able to kind of be a bridge between knowledge in other ways, I think is vital. And for people who actually want to get involved kind of with Landspire or help, or maybe even be part of a fund, how do they do that? Where do they go? How do they contact you guys?
Yeah. Our contact is on our website, landspiregroup.com. You can contact me at josh@landspiregroup.com. And we can get you in touch with myself or my partner, or kind of our investor relations / legal, Triana Allen. And, really, even if it's just you have questions on things, and you need to, talk to somebody about it. I mean, we're not in this to we obviously want to be successful financially, but there's more to it for us than that. And so we just want to be helpful and educate people as we, learn a lot more about this space as well, and expose people to different things that, maybe they just haven't heard of or been exposed to.
Absolutely. We have two fun questions, and then we'll get you out of here. So thanks again for joining us, man. We really appreciate it. It's been great. So first question is, give us your top 5 musicians of all time. Personal.
Top 5 musicians. Top 5 personal. That is a tough one. Probably Biggie, Tupac, Kendrick, J. Cole, and Drake.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a good list.
Yeah.
Glad you got a Compton rapper in there.
Yeah, for sure.
The second one's in your wheelhouse. Your top 5 athletes that have inspired you, your personal list.
Athletes, period, or basketball players?
Athletes, period.
Athletes, period.
Athletes, period. Shoot. My favorite basketball player of all time was Scottie Pippen, so he'd have to be in there.
Like his.
Yeah, Scottie. Serena Williams.
Compton.
Yeah, of course.
I love it.
Serena. Oh, shoot. Tiger. I think, you look at a guy like him and his resilience and has been able to bounce back after being at the pinnacle of his sport and then, going through all that stuff and then come back.
Yeah.
Man, my favorite football player when I was younger was Jerry Rice.
Okay.
So I guess I'll throw him in there.
Same. Yeah.
And then last, man, I would say this is probably a weird one for most, but The Rock.
Okay. He just bought
I'm sure that's different.
Yeah, he just.
I know. And I look at him as a guy who has transitioned unlike anybody else I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He went from, making nothing in the NFL to, getting into WWF, making a name for himself there, to now being the hottest and most sought after actor in the world.
It's crazy.
And his transition game has been sick. So, he obviously just bought XFL, but it's just inspiring. So, for that reason alone,
even though he can't act, I love him.
But blockbusters, right?
Right, exactly. So he's not worried about that.
So his transition game. We talk about that transition, man.
Yeah.
He's on another level.
One other question, small question before you get out of here too, is just a couple of the young NBA talent that you think people need to watch out for.
Watch out for
or people that you think may be the future of this league. Young guys.
You got the kid, the OC local Bol who's out there cooking.
Yeah.
He's out there cooking.
Right.
I think that Denver squad in general, they've got a bunch of young guys on that squad to watch out for.
That squad is amazing.
Yeah, they did a great job. Connolly, shout out to Tim on that. Devin Booker obviously is incredible.
Yeah.
Who else? Shoot.
What do you think about Zion's game?
He's so physically imposing. It's like,
right.
I mean, my only hope with him is that he's able to utilize that and also add pieces to his game so that, if that diminishes or deteriorates in any way, he's still effective. Right. I would love to see him 12 years from now as like a Carmelo Anthony type guy, just getting buckets, getting super skilled, mid-range. I don't know if that'll happen,
right?
But
that's
I would love to see him, kind of transition into, a skilled 4 but 3 kind of guy.
Right.
One other guy I wanted to ask you about that's hot right now is Luka Doncic.
Oh man, he's incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah,
man.
The NBA is in good hands, man. I can't even.
Yeah, they are.
A lot of the high level talent, the next kind of generation, and then the young guys. I think their
mentalities seem to be right now too. So on being the best.
Yeah. And they've revolutionized the game. I mean, you look at Steph and now Dame. It was unheard of to be shooting from where they're shooting from. And so now it's it's unguardable.
Right.
And so it just opens up the floor for there to be a lot more exciting plays if you got to go under the screen at the logo on the sideline, or you got to go over the screen. Sorry. You can go downhill and get to it. So, the league is in great hands. You got Tatum and Donovan Mitchell and all these young guys that are just, the league's in great hands.
Ballers. Well, thank you so much, Josh, for joining us on the Pod Boys podcast. This has been amazing.
For sure.
Shout out to you and what you're doing. I think it's very important work. Yes. It's important for the world to see, obviously important for the minority communities as well. And we'll continue to support you in any way we can. So stay safe out there and
no doubt.
And, keep holding it down.
All right. I appreciate you guys.
All right. Thank you, man. Take care.
All right.